chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Others believe it's a Christmas tree with tinsel wrapped all around it. Still others think it's filled with presents, or maybe even a turkey with dressing. And many, many others think that what makes Christmas the greatest thing of all is celebrating the greatest gift of all, Jesus, who made all of this possible. But not only did he teach us to give good gifts, but to receive them as well. And so I, God's comic Brad Stine, has single-handedly decided to give you the Monday night before Christmas episode extravaganza. Gift after gift after gift is coming your way. For example, that loud noise you heard, that was our heater. I told my son to turn it off, and he didn't. And then finally he said, maybe I should, because he doesn't listen to me. And that shouldn't be talked about when I'm just opening this incredible Monday night broadcast, live, extemporaneously. But then again, without a glitch.
It won't turn off. I pressed the button, and it's still going.
Dang it. Well, then there's only one thing to say, folks. Normally, when I start God's comic, Brad Stine Has Issues, normally when I start it, I have my theme song written by one of my fans, giving it to me, that I've been using for quite some time. But not tonight. Not with Christmas. No, I've got a very special sing-along song to usher you in this special Christmas episode. And I will say this, though, because it is real music, sometimes, as you've learned, Facebook and YouTube shuts everything down because they go, you're a copyright infringing. That could happen. If it does, listen to me carefully, if it turns off, we're going to shut everything down. We're going to start over and not use the song. That way we have a full episode that people can continue to watch and reshare. But if it makes it all the way to the end, I'll be right back. If not, just stick around, jump back on, and we'll start over. So, it's a risky gift, but what else would you expect from God's comic? Christmas edition. Brad Stine Has Issues. Boy, do I. Enjoy the concert.
I remember when people used to say things like Merry Christmas to each other. Everybody said, Merry Christmas! Hey, Merry Christmas to you, Mr. Lowenstein. You know why? Because it wasn't about a religion. It was about something as a culture we thought was so valuable that we'd all do it together, even if I disagreed with the religion behind it, because it was good for all of us instead of just me. But what do people say now? Happy holidays. See, I just say happy holidays because I don't want to say Christmas because you don't believe in Christmas, because I don't want to offend you. It's called Christmas. Shop to get myself a mocha. The lady at the counter said, happy holidays. I said, thanks lady, I am pretty happy, but there's only one holiday that makes me feel that way. And it's called Christmas. What more can I say? It's about the birth of Christ, and you can't take that away. You can call it something else, but that's not what it'll be. It's called Christmas with the capital C. God's got a law and we pretty much destroyed it. We're gonna get judged, there's no way to avoid it. But Jesus came down to take the punishment for me. He did it for you too, so now maybe you can see why it's called Christmas. What more can I say? It's about the birth of Christ, and you can't take that away. You can call it something else, but that's not what it'll be. It's called Christmas with the capital C. It's called Christmas. Oh yes, we want to say happy holidays because we don't want to leave anybody out. Really, how come there's a ton of holidays in February? Nobody ever says happy holidays in February, do they? They say what it is. Happy Valentine's. Oh, you believe in love? It's called Christmas. But nobody wants to say Christmas. Everything else but Christmas. Why? I know why. You do too. It's because it's got Christ in it, and after 2,000 years, he's still intimidating people. You see, when a religious person says, I'm the way, people don't want to hear it.
I say you gotta say Merry Christmas because it is. If you don't believe in it, fine. But I have a flash for you. Christianity happens to be the religious heritage of my country, whether you like it or not. It's called Christmas. So if you're not a Christian or you don't like it and you don't want Christmas celebrated, God bless you. But let me tell you something. If you think you're gonna stop me from saying it because it offends you, hey, I got a flash for you. Put a helmet on. It's my country too. It's called Christmas. What more can I say? It's about the birth of Christ, and you can't take that away. You can call it something else, but that's not what it'll be. It's called Christmas with a capital C. It's called Christmas. What more can I say? It's about the birth of Christ, and you can't take that away. You can call it something else, but that's not what it'll be. It's called Christmas. It's called Christmas. It's called Christmas with a capital C. You're welcome. Merry Christmas. It's God's comic. Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. It's called Christmas with a capital C. Wyatt, my son, my firstborn, who issued from my loins, came from nowhere. I turned you into a man. I turned you into a Lowe's employee. I'm so proud. I put all that money into schooling. You know why, Wyatt? You know what my big dream was? That you would make it to Lowe's as a seller of wrenches. And by goodness, you've done it.
Yeah, selling wrenches, selling drills. You know, I actually had a customer a few days ago.
You had a customer? I thought they avoid you at all times.
No.
No.
2 customers, okay?
Yeah.
One guy only spoke Spanish.
Really? Do you speak Spanish?
No.
Then how do you know he was speaking Spanish?
Because the other guy was translating for him.
Okay.
So,
Do tell.
they call me up to a register.
Okay.
I show up.
You mean registero? Okay, I just was trying to help any of our Hispanic
Just
viewers.
don't.
Okay.
So I show up, and the cashier explains that the drill that they bought the day before, it wasn't the one that they actually wanted.
Oh.
And they had a picture of the barcode of the thing that they did want.
Yeah.
So I went there, took him to the place,
Yeah.
unlocked it, and
Okay.
got it for him.
Okay.
Took it back there.
Yeah.
And I thought that was it.
Right.
I thought I was done.
Yeah.
And then they come back and said, oh, nope,
What?
that wasn't it.
Yeah.
That wasn't it at all. And so we look at the receipt, and it basically what happened was they saw a display for a big thing.
Yeah.
They took a picture with the wrong barcode and bought the small version of it.
Oh.
Now, that happens occasionally.
The Poquito version. Why the
Now-
Poquito?
Now that happens a bit,
Yeah.
but you see, the guy who only spoke Spanish didn't quite get that.
Okay.
Because language barrier and
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah.
And it was at this point that I realized that the translator may not have been the best person for the job.
Okay. So.
Because when he was trying to explain to the other guy what went wrong,
Yeah.
I don't know, his Spanish seemed a little off.
Oh.
Here's what he said, and I quote.
Yes.
Is no correcto. That was his Spanish.
Is no collecto.
Correcto.
Correcto. Ah.
Now, I'm no Spanish teacher.
correcto. No, you're not. And yet.
And yet I caught that.
Yeah, no correcto. My
Um,
goodness.
as no correcto. You gotta get the as. It's important.
You know, we think if we had an O or a at the end of Spanish, it's Spanish. And it's not, son. Get it into your skull. That doesn't make it Spanish. You know why it's a Spanish word? You know what it means?
No.
Don't speak Spanish.
Oh.
Yeah. Listen, I got to say hi to some folks because it is Christmas. And you know who the number one first person was? Dusty Wilhelm.
Nicholas!
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Nick, I am so sorry, my friend. You know, Nick has been a great listener, viewer. Do you know he came to one of my shows live?
Yeah.
When I was in, where was I? Minneapolis? Not Minneapolis. Lord knows. I avoided that at all stages. I was in Minnesota.
Did you get your own concert location wrong?
I said Minneapolis instead of Minnesota. I meant to say Minnesota. So I was there. Nick came out. He's got his own business. He's an entrepreneur.
So let me get this straight here. The man goes out of his way to go visit you on one of your shows, and you don't even have the courage to get the name of the place right.
Wait, that takes courage?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you're admitting your faults on live podcasts.
Said the wrong name.
How could you? It was Nick Kress. The man basically single-handedly keeps the show afloat sometimes.
Wyatt, Marsha, did you know that Nick Kress is loaded? Ladies, he's loaded. All right. Marsha Pointer Reed. Good evening, Brad and Wyatt. Merry Karima. Merry Karima. What else? Karen Boyd. She showed up. She's only third, though, Wyatt. Only third. Anita Stevens. G'day, Merry Christmas. What happens when you hear g'day? Where's it coming from?
Australia.
Yeah. You know why? You hopped to it, didn't you, son? Kathy Simpson said, g'day, Merry Christmas. Chris Feldhausen. Hello, everyone. Merry Christmas. I don't know if I know Chris Feldhausen. I think he's a new guy. Should we let him stay? Now, here's the important thing that I want you guys to understand. These are live broadcasts. We made it a point. We made it a point to make sure we did everything live so that I would be able to deal with any issue. Yeah, that happens. And listen, I should say something about the la 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 for all of those of you out there who are watching this in real time. Wyatt set this up.
I
wanted you to know what happened was that Wyatt.
You're the one who knocked the iPad over.
I did. Anyway,
what are you blaming me for?
I'm trying to get this back. Everybody, amuse yourselves for just a moment.
Quick, I'll play the backup music.
Yes. Nice! Keep it going, Wyatt.
I am.
Okay. Phase 1 is over. Hang on, phase 2 happening as we speak. Phase 2 is here. Right. Phase 3 right there.
You good?
4.
You good?
This has to come way down like that. And next thing you know, you've got a podcast again, Wyatt. That was crazy. Normally, the glitches come from you. Okay.
I've taught you well.
Yeah, I know.
No, never do that again.
I don't want to do it again. I want to say hi to everybody. Anita Stevens. Hello, Anita. Michelle Penny. Love your work. Hello from Canada. She's from Canada, Wyatt. Should we say a prayer now, or should we just send them ammunition?
Do they even have guns though?
No, that's a.
I guess they could throw the bullets really hard.
They could throw the bullets or put them in a slingshot
or snowball.
Nice.
Or maple leaf.
Words not sync with sound. James, it does sync with sound. You're the one that has a problem. Tell James Voigt that it does sync with sound, please.
It does sync with sound.
Karen Boyd, Merry Christmas with lots of our Christmas trees. Jim Brunel's here. Forrest Bainey. The Force is with us. Merry Christmas to Brad and White. And even though nobody else says it, how about Brad's wife? Let's include her in Merry Christmas too. Why would he do that? Why would he include your mom? You know how she is. She's so challenging.
Yeah, that's a word for it.
Merry Christmas. Brad Wyatt, favorite song. Oh, he loves Christmas with the capital C. Merry Christmas from Barbara McDuvall. Let's see. Karen Boyd says John Gearhart and his daughter and his grandkids. What about pets? You got pets, Brad? Cats, maybe?
Yeah.
Why?
We had a pet turtle once.
What'd you call him?
Hardhead.
What happened to your pet turtle, Wyatt?
He ran away.
Folks, you want to know you have a child that shouldn't have a pet? His turtle ran away.
Well, technically it was a tortoise, but you know.
His tortoise took off. He had a took-off tortoise. How is it possible for a tortoise to outrun you? But he did, my son.
I took it for a walk, and that was the last I ever saw of
He
him.
did! This is a real story. My son lost
this
his
isn't a
tortoise.
joke or anything. This actually
My
happened.
son lost his tortoise. This thing broke too, or just collapsed?
No, what happened was, did the mic stand fall? Like
Everything collapsed because of your glitchy setup.
yes, my glitchy setup that you set up.
But guess what? This time the glitch was on me because I'm the one that paid the price for your glitchiness.
Well, you always.
Well,
pay the
I always
price.
pay the price, but this time it was a visual pay that is rare. All right.
Yep.
Let's see. Nick Hetcher, Small World. Not only you and I tied to Frank Sinatra Coffee, and Mark Gunger's wife actually did the speech for our daughter's high school graduate, but our old pastor was Dave Selfness, father to Andy Selfness of Go Fish. So there, just released a new book, Encyclopedia of Dad Jokes. Love you, brother, man. So that's Nick Hetcher, and he's got coffee. So what more can you want, son? Do you drink coffee?
No, I do drink the coffee creamer though. That stuff's good.
I love all the photos I see where Santa kneels beside Jesus. That's Dusty Wilhelm. Let's see. Barbara Mick Duvall says there's echoes. Why are you always taking the blame for screwing this stuff up? Because no matter what we do, somebody's got a problem from their end. Can it be their problem?
Yes.
Could it be their little thing?
As a general rule of thumb, if one person says the stream is bad, it's on them.
Yeah.
If hundreds of people say the stream's bad, it's on you.
It's on them. Hey, Nick Kress was here, of course. Jeff Hayes, Adam Wa. He said, please come to a show in the Pacific Northwest. You mean where Antifa has their own stocks? It's a publicly traded anarchist group. Yeah, I don't think I'll be heading to the Pacific Northwest. Used to go there a lot. Well, actually, that's not true. I'm going to be in Portland, Oregon, in March, I think. So yes, I'm going to do some stuff in Oregon because I want to help that poor state retrieve itself. Let's see, Adam Moan, we got him. I'm just making sure I got everybody before we move on. Betty Morell Stewart, sounds like someone's from Australia. Jeff Hayes, St. Nick, Wild the Fox that delivers presents. And Bill Reese, you are killing me. Now, do we need to set out an alert? Does he mean literally that he's being murdered and he just had time to either call 911 or text us to let him know what a fan he is? What do you think happened?
Maybe he was being killed while watching the podcast.
Ooh, wow. Wouldn't that be great for ratings, though?
No. I mean, this isn't a true crime podcast, so probably not.
Well, listen. You know, because it is a special Christmas podcast, we have a very special guest who will be joining us. You know who it is, Wyatt?
Santa Claus?
No. Our special guest that we're going to have an interview with on our little table that was carved from a 3,000-year-old redwood.
Oh, in that case, no.
Nikki!
It's close to St. Nick, I guess.
Okay, Nikki Leonti is going to be our guest tonight. And if you've never seen Nikki, she was on America's Got Talent with her husband and her daughter. And she told her story about what happened to her and how she ended up with a daughter at 16 in the Christian music business, and she didn't have a spouse. So we're going to talk about it. And listen, she has amazing life, amazing career, amazing story, brave, courageous, wonderful woman, and you're going to love this interview. But it's Christmas time, son, and so I felt like there's so many iconic songs out there, so many iconic Christmas traditions. They're becoming less and less. America is becoming more secular, less concerned about America. We are watching the dismantling of America in our real time. It's sad, but it is what it is. So we can just admit it, watch it happen, record it here so that at least in the archives, when I end up in prison or at a death camp, at least this will show up and go, holy smoke, he wasn't kidding. He wasn't joking, this guy. We should have gone and protected him when the getting was good. But the getting's not getting good, White. The getting's getting bad. It's getting. Have you noticed that?
I've gotten it.
Yes. So I thought I wanted to talk to you guys about a song that's been around. It was very popular. It was, I think it first launched and got popular either in the 40s or the 50s by a guy who was called the Singing Cowboy. And you know what his name was?
I couldn't even begin to fathom a guess.
Karen Boyd. What are the odds?
Oh.
I mean, that's so rare that you would have a name similar to Karen's. I'm lying. I forgot his name, White. I literally forgot his name. Anyways, he used to own the California Angels. So when I used to go watch the Angels, he owned them at that time, and he was very rich and he was famous. And he sang the song Rudolph, the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And you know what? I was thinking about Rudolph, and I realized that Rudolph has some problems. Rudolph. What if Rudolph went woke? Well, I thought, being Christmas time and heck, the country's going woke, why don't we explore that? So, son, why don't you give our people, before we bring in our guests, a special woke version of the problem of Rudolph?
But before we do that, I have one question.
Please.
Did Rudolph the Reindeer exist before the song?
No.
Or was he created by the song?
Literally, it came from the song's loins.
Oh, and you know, audience, how important that is to this podcast.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what you had to say.
Okay. Woke Rudolph.
It's me, God's comic Brad Stine on Brad Stine Has Issues. And of all the Christmas songs being sung this time of year, there's one that seems to be sending mixed signals. Stick around while I illuminate your foggy perceptions. You know, I came across a classic Christmas song the other day, and after examining the words, I've come to realize how easily humans accept ideas at face value without scrutinizing them for philosophical and or cultural flaws. The song I'm referring to, of course, is the nefarious Rudolph, the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Here are the lyrics with my copious notes. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Stop! First off, why bring up the red nose? If you have a red-nosed reindeer, it's fairly obvious, and social decorum would dictate you keep it to yourself to save the reindeer's embarrassment. We don't treat others that way normally. Who goes around introducing others like, hey, there's Jimmy, the pockmarked postman? Or have you met Nancy, the lazy-eyed court reporter? No, in the past, the only time we emphasize the physical flaw in others is when we're trying to sell tickets to a sideshow. Now, I'm pro-sideshow, mind you, but looking for an alligator-skinned woman or a snouted man before plunking down good money? For red nose, not so much. Had a very shiny nose. Wait a minute. You just told me in the first line it was red, not shiny. Ball bearings are shiny, patent leather shoes as well. Not necessarily a color. So which is it, red or shiny? And if you ever saw it, why would I? I don't need to since you already described it to me. You would even say it glows. Glows? The moon glows, candles glow. How could you possibly confuse a glow for red or shiny? Why can't you get your story straight? Who are you protecting? All of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. Why not? He's a reindeer with an indecipherable nose issue. Something needs to be said. They never let poor Rudolph. Poor? How do you know? You have access to his tax returns? What, suddenly it's a class struggle? We have to play the poor card? Fear not, Rudolph. If a socialist ever seizes power in the U.S., redistributed wealth is coming. Playing any reindeer games. Does he care? What could a reindeer game consist of anyways? They have hooves, for Pete's sake. Hooves, not fingers. So that rules out board games that involve dice. Can't grip them. No ball games. Can't hold a bat, catch a football, or dribble a basketball, or any charade, since it would be impossible for him to indicate how many words or syllables. Sounds like he's not missing much. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, huh? Foggy? Where? The North Pole? It's probably foggy a lot there, but are you saying the entire Earth got foggy on the same night? That sounds like the apocalypse to me. What's next? Locusts and boils? Santa came to say... Finally, Santa shows up. Where was he all the times Rudolph was being ridiculed and in pain? Can anyone believe in a Santa that seems to ignore us in our darkest hour? Rudolph, with your nose so bright. Santa, please, keep up here. Are your options? They're simple. The nose is either red, shiny, or glowy, none of which fit the category of bright, or someone would have said so long ago during the reindeer mocking Rudolph sessions. Won't you guide my sleigh tonight? Let me get this straight. Santa spent a year using magic elves to build, paint, box, and wrap every possible gift imaginable, from Legos to tennis bracelets, yachts to laptops. He is able to pack every gift for every human on Earth in one sleigh and deliver it via chimney to every human on Earth in one night. But somehow, you were unable to fashion a couple of headlights to your sleigh and needed to call on the freak. Then how the reindeer loved him. Oh yeah, that's gonna happen. When they hated and mocked him his whole life, and suddenly he's thrust into the spotlight, probably illuminated by his nose, to accomplish something these brats were incapable of, thus putting him in the category of Santa's favorite. Suddenly, they're all going to let bygones be bygones and embrace him as misunderstood, and they'll receive the revelation of their own arrogance and bullying and suddenly repent, asking his forgiveness, which he'll grant readily, as he is an enlightened soul. Who wrote this story? The Hallmark Channel? As they shouted out with glee. Glee? Who uses the word glee? Yeah, that's what the song was missing. An archaic word from 19th century romance novel to keep the song exciting. Rudolph the red, shiny, glowing, bright-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history. Why not? There's not a lot of competition for classic songs featuring reindeer. As a matter of fact, it may be the only reindeer song ever penned. The fact that he was genetically mutated just gave the song the conflict it needed to give it legs. By the way, just heard about a buffalo in Wyoming that was born with 2 heads, 6 legs, and it lived. Sounds to me like the making of a new Christmas song classic. Where's Mel Torme when you need him? This is God's Comic, Brad Stine. I hope you were deeply offended by that last one, because that's my Christmas gift to you. A helmet. Folks, I don't know how to say this, but a troll just informed me that Grandma got run over by a reindeer is in fact another reindeer song. Where in the world would we be without the insight and depth of trolls? Like and subscribe to my channel. I got a lot more coming. And hit the notification bell. That way you'll know when all the new crazy stuff is out there and nobody else will know but you. And also, if you want to, watch one of these videos just so you can keep up to date on how smart and amazing I actually am. Hopefully I'll come up with a whole new song to make fun of soon.
You know, if your Christmas shopping isn't quite finished, here's your chance to get being a Christian without being an idiot, 11 assumed truths that make us look stupid. Now, why does it matter? Because I'm going to assign this to the person that you choose for me to sign it to. Now, I realize it's Monday and Christmas is Sunday, so it's very possible that if you were to order it today, and all you have to do is say, give me the link, and it's $55. That's very expensive donation for a book, but not a book that's made out of pure genius. The things that you will laugh at, be changed with forever and ever. I wish I could read this book and just enjoy its pages, but I wrote it, so it's redundant. But nevertheless, if I hadn't written it, I would have bought a number of them and given them all over the place. Anyways, if you want to donate $55, that'll allow me to send it to you. I will sign it to whomever you want. Just say, where's the link? We'll send it to you. It is tax deductible because I'm a ministry, God's Comic Ministries. And that's what I try to do. Go around the world, go around the country, tell people that God's real. This is important. But also to tell them that life without God is going to be problematic. You see, if you do not believe in a creator, the ultimate engineer, the ultimate mind, then you are here by accident. You are a Darwinist or a neo-Darwinist. And thus, you are simply an amoeba, dust, carbon, water, H2O. What else? What else are we made out of? We're made out of carbon, H2O. We're made out of diamonds. I know that. I know we're rutabagas. I know we have a lot of rutabagas in us in the lower extremities. Wyatt, in my lower extremities, I feel a rutabaga coming on. Is that
cool.
normal?
Maybe you shouldn't have had that rutabaga before the show then.
Why?
Aforementioned rutabaga issue.
Listen. Talk about an underrated vegetable.
No, yeah, okay, how about this? Underrated vegetables. Ooh, I know, anything but a rutabaga. There's a difference between underrated and irrelevant. Rutabagas are irrelevant.
What?
They are a irrelevant vegetable. They provide no nutrient that you can't get from some other way more popular vegetable. The only people...
Are elephants relevant? Because I'd hate to have an irrelevant elephant.
You may joke and rhyme all you want, but the fact of the matter is, the only people who eat rutabagas are the people who like them. And they are weird. Do you want to be known as the person who eats rutabagas?
What is the weirdest food you like?
Oh, gosh. I already used up the coffee creamer joke.
You do like those, though.
I do. Like the French vanilla creamer. Like, and then you get those tiny black, like, straws that you usually use to stir it. And you just stick it in there and suck it up.
Wyatt, that is so bad. Tell me one.
And it's much better to drink that in coffee, which is also not the best for you.
Why, listen. We're made out of carbon, H2O. We're mainly water, right?
Yes.
What else are we made out of?
Carbon.
Yeah, what else?
I think, oxygen.
Oxygen, yeah.
And I think those are the main three. Everything else is in trace amounts, like iron, calcium, magnesium. Apparently that's good for bone health.
Do you know that if you combine iron, calcium, and magnesium, you know what you get? Rutabaga. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people don't know that rutabagas are underrated because they aren't braggarts. They keep to themselves. When the vegetables get together and have a vegetable gathering, a reunion, or a conference,
I believe the official term is a cornucopia.
Yes. When they get a cornucopia or a conference copia, they like to keep to themselves. They like to stay amongst the gourds, amongst the mangoes. They just stick to themselves. And the rutabagas. And they don't like to call attention to themselves, and thus they don't get the attention that, for example, you might hear from a squash, a melon. Orange is hugely overrated. Wyatt, an orange is overrated because it's the only fruit named after a color.
Oranges are overrated?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. How many fruits out there do you sell the juice of independent? You got apple juice, and you got orange juice.
Cranberry juice!
Oh, you mean the stuff that's more sugar than berry? Of course. Also, they're not even fruits.
You know what cranberries are jealous of?
Boysenberries?
Rutabagas. You know, it's funny because I don't normally go off on a tangent.
Keep going.
What is that a mockery laugh?
No, let's see, the mockery laugh is... Nope, not that one. What even is that one?
That sounds like...
Oh, yeah, that's the Twilight Zone one. We don't use that one too often around here.
No, you don't. Well, listen.
Yeah, I lost my note card with all of the sound effect names on it, so I'm just guessing at this point.
The last thing I would expect from you after I bought you your little pad with sound effects is for you to take notes so you'd know where all the sound effects were. Because, son, the moment you become good at this, why, you're going to be snatched away by some other fly-by-night podcast that's barely hanging on by a thread.
But they'd have a different, sound effect board, and I'd have to memorize that one. And it took me this long to figure out this one. It's 8 buttons.
Well,
If I can't memorize 8 buttons...
Listen, is that all it is the 8 buttons, or can you program other ones within the button to shift
it's
and get more?
8 buttons, but you can program whatever you want into them. I want to do it, but I just don't really know what else we need.
I'd love the sound of a rutabaga. You know what? I got to tell you something, folks. I looked at the week, and I looked at the weeks and the Advent, the expectation of Christmas and what it means. And one thing that was constantly coming up, I saw on the internet, was people concerned about the fact that Christmas really shouldn't even be celebrated at all. And there's 2 main reasons. You know what they are, Wyatt?
Overt consumerism, being bad, and I'm guessing some religious protest.
Okay, well, close. One of them was a religious protest.
Okay, cool.
And what that was they said Jesus was not born on December 25th. Mm-hmm. And so what they're saying is that pagans had holidays on that day. And what happened was the church decided to overpower the pagans by choosing that day to have a Christmas celebration, and thus basically bring more highlighting to Christ than to the pagan holidays. Now, son, I know that you, before you became a Christian, were a worshiper of rutabagas. I didn't know if that would be something you would be able to overcome, but you did.
I mean, look, the rutabagians have a rich and varied history, like rutabagas.
Well, here's what's so beautiful about that, son.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know out there if any of you guys have a problem with Christmas. I never even thought twice about celebrating Christmas at Christmas time because it was so beautiful. And this is the thing I wanted to say. They will say to you that some of the, or many of the traditions that come with Christmas, the tree, the garland, the mistletoe, the Santa Claus, of course, that's not quite pagan tradition. I don't think anybody worshipped Santa Claus. Do you think so, Wyatt?
I mean, if they did, they'd be weird, so.
Wouldn't they? Probably lovers of rutabagas. But
Maybe,
here's
yeah.
what's funny. I don't know if that's true. To be honest, I didn't do a deep dive in this because here's what I don't understand. They say Christmas is a pagan holiday. This is how they frame it. Christmas is a pagan holiday. Well, it can't be because Christmas means Christ's Mass, meaning it is the celebration or the kind of royal tradition of a celebration, and they're celebrating Christ. So here's what I have to say. Let's say that all of the traditions came from something else. Let's say that the tree was somebody else's tradition and the garland, this and that. And you could say, well, this predated Christianity, so all you guys did was try to steal the pagan holidays and circumvent it and turn it into a Christian holiday, which I would say to you, so what? Yeah, they probably did do that. They probably did say, thank you for all of your false holidays that represent a false God, but I'd like to show you the real God, and I'm going to use your formulas, your traditions, and redeem them, turn them into something beautiful that actually represents truth and reality. Now, you know, in the Bible, Paul was at Mars Hill, and he said, hey, I notice all your gods that you have out there, statues, and I noticed one of your statues said, to the unknown God, because they didn't want to leave anybody out. They didn't want to take a chance that there's one guy they left out that suddenly gets pissed off and hits him with lightning or boils or rutabagas. So he says, I want to talk to you about your unknown God. And then he used their pagan tradition to point them to Christ. Now, these same people that hate Christmas because they think somehow it's really secretly worshiping pagans would have a problem with that, even though it's in the Bible, because the Bible utilized that to say that you can, in fact, redeem false holidays, false mythology and give it true mythology, the truth of Christ, to redeem, fix it, and to turn it into something beautiful and amazing. And they did. The holly suddenly had the red and the green to represent the brow that was bloody as they placed on it this crown of thorns. The tree, by the way, just to throw it out to you guys, just to let you know, if you want to say the pagans use the tree, the pagans use the fir tree, the pagans use the mistletoe. Pagans, and you know what I'd say to them? You know who invented trees and mistletoe and garland? God! He made them. So they wouldn't even have those to worship had not God created them in the first place. So it's his. So really the people that did it wrong were the pagans. They misused God's creation. I don't know of a human being ever in history that came into their house, saw the Christmas tree, and began to get down on their knees and worship it. Nobody does. It's a beautiful representation of nature. Who is the creator of the natural things? God. But he's supernatural. He's outside of nature, but he said, I'm going to make a little place for you guys to live and to enjoy and to have the access of life and beauty and the smells and the tastes and the feels. This is a God's creation. So to me, it's a beautiful way to take that which was meant for a false religion and turn it into the truth and the beauty. So I think that the myopic, so restricted view that some of these legalistic Christians have of trying to look for something that all the Christians are doing wrong and not fitting into their proper interpretation of this as somehow worshiping a pagan holiday doesn't make any sense, because the heart said, I'm not doing that. Just like when you ate the meat sacrificed to idol, they said, I'm not eating this and then thanking the idol. You're saying, God, the idol's fake. I'm using the meat taken from the fake idol, eating it, nourishing my body that you created, worshiping the actual God. This is all in the Bible. It's happened over and over again. You got to use some common sense. You got to use some insight. You got to use some depth. You got to use some ability to reason and to think about what is the power of God. Doesn't he sort of circumvent anything else that would try to get in the way? Can't he overcome? Doesn't he literally have the power to turn anything he chooses into holy? Who are you to decide that this simple vase, clay pot, has sacred value? You see, God can do whatever he stinking wants. Don't limit him with your legalism. I don't understand. We're living in a country that is literally crumbling in front of our eyes. We are living in the United States of America, formed by Christians who came here to escape religious persecution, and little by little, time by time, tried to create a country where Christianity would be honored and that religion would be sacrosanct as the ability to give a foundational moral truth for the people who would rule the country, because we are a republic. Of course there were mistakes made. Of course there was evil and sinful things done. But the Christianity constantly taught them, you have to redeem this, you have to fix this, you have to take the things that are broken, that are not consistent with what you say was true, and you have to change it. And you have to bring it into the alignment that God would expect you to do. That's what America has always tried to do. It's why everybody continues to pour over our borders trying to get a piece of the American dream. Now, it is going to be destroyed, folks, without God's intervention. And if we do not return to God and beg him to forgive us and to redeem this land, we will literally be the ones that watched the end of America. It's going to die. It's already dying, but we have to resuscitate it or watch it literally pass away in front of us. We're watching now the truth that the FBI has collaborated with governments. This is what fascism literally is. It's not a hyperbole. It's not right-wing rhetoric. We now know for a fact that when the agency that's designed to be the policing agency of the nation is in cahoots with a government system, which is in cahoots with technology, so that they control the dissemination of information. They control your freedom, your right to buy, sell, or trade, the ability to eat or not to eat, what to inject in your body, what to wear. Once all that is in collusion, that is literally what fascism is. It's the control of the government with all of the systems that rule the nation. Now, that's where we are. It's not a joke. It was found in Twitter. We now know it's true. We're now getting people saying, medical associations agreeing with what we were trying to say for 2 years. The vaccines are killing people. They are not good. They're not effective. They don't work. But yet people continue to take them and will continue to wear their masks. The delusion is complete. The control of the academia by CRT, critical race theory, and wokeism, Marxism, is in our schools. Now we have deviancy shown to children. We are literally watching America die. It's dying. And once it dies, it cannot be retrieved, because America is the last bastion of freedom. Europe is already crumbling. And once the technocrats and the World Economic Forums and all of the rich old money systems that actually control the world end America, the only country filled with guns and people who believe that autonomy and freedom and free speech and liberty was sacrosanct and worth dying for. Once we're gone, there is no one left to protect, not America, the human race. Australia's gone. Canada is fully totalitarian, completely lost. Completely lost. And guys, we're dying. I didn't want to get into that right now. That's going to be for next year. This is Christmas time, and I wanted to use this time to uplift and encourage and inspire. But the truth is, part of the inspiration could be what is really happening and what are we going to do about it, if anything. Are we going to watch elections continue to be stolen, and when people call it out, we simply have no recourse? If that's the case, if the Republicans are not going to go and try to defend those who've lost races that were clearly stolen, then we've given up. So, I've already begun to gather people to interview for next year. I've already got interviews in the can that you're going to see that are very interesting. They're very difficult to watch and to listen to because they are proving and exposing what is happening to us. I know that many of you come on for the first time thinking it's going to be the funny show, because isn't that what comedians do? But I don't. I'm a comedian who cares about truth more than anything, cares about God more than anything, cares about freedom more than anything, cares about religious liberties more than anything, cares about justice more than anything, cares about giving people and humans the right to live unimpeded by the despicable, self-appointed rich elite who literally believe they can kill billions of humans because they need to be weeded out, and these people never, ever volunteer to take themselves out. It's always us. But now that we know the FBI and CIA colludes in these things, well, I don't have the technology to defend myself if they decide to come in the middle of the night and kill me, arrest me, shoot me, poison me. I can't change it. You'll know what happened. You'll know when I'm gone, because I'm not going to kill myself. So if I kill myself, it's because I was murdered or imprisoned, or if they find something about me that they said was evil and illegal, it's because they planted it. I mean, and they can do that. There's nothing I can do. But I can't speak truth, and I will as long as I can. I'm hoping to reach a place where we're going to build more and more of this podcast into next year. I'll probably have to create a very tiny subscription base, very small, won't be expensive, but so we can grow this, try to make it better. I think we're going to have more and more interesting people and more interesting talks. And I'm going to fight. I'm going to go out into the marketplace. I'm going to start posting where I'm going to be live coming up. And don't forget, January 15th, I'm going to be in Dallas-Fort Worth. Please tell everybody you know that's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and churches especially, if you go and ask for tickets, I can give you discounts if you want to buy bulk tickets. We want to sell it out and fill it up and show people what Christians and conservatives will do when they are given a comedian. This is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to accomplish. I appreciate when you guys show up, and I want to joke and laugh with my son, but truth is paramount, and that's what I'm always going to give you here on this podcast. And so I wanted to let you meet somebody that many of you might have seen her story on America's Got Talent. You might have not even known some of the people that used to come watch her when she was a resident at a hotel in L.A., and the famous people that would come and listen to her and sit in. One of which you're going to see a little clip of in this interview. Very famous guitarist that just walked in and grabbed a guitar and started playing. And she's going to be telling her story. Because, folks, in the end, all the Australians that are watching, the Canadians, the Irish, the South Africans, the Iowans, and the Indianans, and the Floridians, and the Oregonians, and the Brazilians, and whomever else. We're all humans made in the image of God. That's what I'm going to fight for. That's what we need to return to. We must decide, and this is going to be my launch into next year, a new Christianity must emerge in America of warriors committed to their faith, understanding it, studying it, and bringing it into the marketplace unapologetic until it begins to bear fruit. That's where we must go if we have a chance at this nation surviving. And part of that inspiration can come from people who've had a hard journey and what they learned from it and what you can learn from them. I'm sure you've heard Nikki Leonti sing when she was a top Christian artist, and maybe you didn't know what she's done in the meantime in some of the famous secular songs she's written for Disney and others that she's going to talk about because she's a Christ follower. She's one of us. She's had a hard road. God got her through it. This can inspire you. You see, there's only a couple Stine Has Issues left until the year's out, and this is the one right before Christmas. I just recorded this with her 2 days ago with her son, who just flew in from Florida. And I'm going to show it to you. You're going to enjoy it. It's going to inspire you. Get your friends, get your family, let people know. Come watch. Grab some popcorn, grab a beverage. And by the way, have a great Christmas. Be inspired. It doesn't look good, but we're still here. Let's hear how people overcome, and let's do likewise. Let's talk to Nikki Leonti. Well, as you know, on Stine Has Issues, it's important that I get guests that not only are intriguing and interesting, but much, much smarter than me. And that's not hard to do. But, and yet, as I go and find this amazing database of people in the Nashville area, of course, I've had people from all over the world now that we've been interviewing, but it's great the amount of talent and interesting people that are in this town. And this is a great time of year where they are around and they get to come into studio as opposed to Zoom, which I consider incredibly just kind of impersonal, and I like the personal approach. So I've decided to wear pants this time, which is unusual. Wyatt, for me, isn't that kind of a one-of-a-kind time for me?
Yeah, but, you know, always good to try something new.
You know what? Mix it up is what I've always said. Keep people guessing. Keep them on the edge of their seat. But this particular day is one of my favorite types of interviews because it's with an artist, and I love artists, always have, and love talking to them because they have such a unique way to see the world and such an important way to see the world. Of course, as a Christian, I believe that God is the ultimate artist and that all truth is God's truth. Thus, he reveals himself through the artistic process. Keep in mind that our people used to leave the Sistine Chapel as our legacy, and now we're doing puppet shows. So it's time for Christians to retrieve the very arts that God Almighty created. And with that, I have a very special guest who's done some very amazing things, but more importantly, has a story to tell. And stories are crucial because it gets us through life and teaches us we're not alone. So I would like you, my fan base from all over the world, to welcome, and I hope I pronounced her last name right, because it's Italian, and if they get mad, they shoot you, because they're all in the mafia. Right. Nikki Leonti. Is that
yes,
true?
you got it, Nikki
Leonti.
Yes.
Yay, Nikki, thank you. Good to see you. Good to have you with us.
It's good to be here. That was so eloquently presented.
Well, you know what? I've found that if you can fake eloquence, you can really get somewhere in life, and that's really what I've done. So try to fake the eloquence, fake sophistication, fake intelligence, and if all those fails, I just go to my son, throw it to him, and let him look crazy. Wyatt, so far so good?
Oh man, yeah, I look absolutely, just commit me right now.
Okay, well, anyways, he's going to be committed. Well, Nikki, I remember, and you reminded me of this when you came into the studio, that we had met once before, and it was in a long car drive from Denver, Colorado to Estes Park.
Yes.
For those of you who've never been to Estes Park, it's a very cool part of Colorado. It's also the outer exterior shot of the hotel that was used in The Shining. You
Oh, really?
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't know that.
So the hotel that's kind of, as you get into Estes Park, that's up on the hill, was, I guess, the exterior they used for The Shining. So it's spooky.
Wow, I'm glad I didn't know that then.
But we went there, and we talked, and we talked, and we talked, and we just were a couple Christians on our way to another gathering of fellow Christian artists. But what we were really trying to do was, I think, figure out what we're doing on this planet. Because in the end, right? Life is pretty quick.
Yes.
And along the way, we find that we are filled with challenges and pain.
Yeah.
And sometimes some good stuff. And yet, what I have learned is we grow more from pain than pleasure. And it seems like the only real significant things we learn in life is from the pain.
Yeah, I agree.
So I know that you have had a very unique story, a very interesting, well, maybe not unique, maybe it's kind of an old story. But when you have to deal with it, when it's your story to grapple with, it can be difficult. So let's just start quickly with the beginning. You were born in Corona,
Yes.
California. I say that because I've been there many times. Used to live in Anaheim Hills, so I know all about Corona.
Corona, special
And
place.
it was a very special place. I think they even have a penitentiary there, or some kind of
yes.
some kind of
There's a Corona, the
correctional center.
CRC.
That's right.
My parents did ministry there.
There you go.
When I was 10, 11 is when I started. They brought in videos of me singing for the inmates at that facility.
Nice.
Yeah.
So they didn't have the courage of bringing you personally.
They didn't have it was illegal, but
Exactly.
they sent me in and I would give them messages.
So your dad was a pastor there in Corona?
I would say they were more along the lines of evangelism.
Oh.
So he didn't necessarily pastor a church, but they did prison tours.
Yeah.
And they
Singing?
Singing, speaking. My mom's a singer. My dad would speak. They both, played instruments and just were involved in churches all over. And we toured the area.
Yes.
But yeah, they didn't pastor over a church at that point.
Yeah, okay. So they kind of were itinerant sort of ministers throughout the country, or just at California?
I would say locally. Yeah, locally throughout the region. And they would travel a little bit. They went to all the way to New York to do a prison there and sat with Tex Watson, random, real.
Nice. Now they were not involved with a denomination or church or whatever. It was just
various churches, various denominations.
They weren't sponsored by a particular group or.
Well, we were what you would call at the time in the 90s church hoppers.
Okay.
Yeah. We couldn't really gather ourselves to root anywhere, too long, or, it just didn't work out. So we were hopping all over churches.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I think any Christian that's been around long enough has done a lot of hopping. Yes. And what I find interesting is, for me, and I'm guessing you've been a Christian your whole life, basically, and so have I, is what's interesting about it is that you end up in different denominations over time normally,
right?
Different forms or genres of Christianity. I mean, I remember growing up in a church where Catholics were all going to hell because it was a Protestant church. So, Catholics are going to hell. And
That's
then,
how I was raised.
Okay.
Yes.
And charismatics, pretty much demon possessed.
Oh, really? So I would have been demon possessed for you.
So, and of course, I just accept that, okay, because I listen to my pastor, I listen to the denomination, this is what we believe. And I moved to California. My dad lived there, and in the early 78, 79. So I'm there. I end up in my first charismatic church. The first one was actually Chuck Smith's church, Calvary Chapel,
Love Chuck
which
Smith.
was a great guy. And
He
the
was.
beginning of the Christian, contemporary Christian music started right there with Love Song. And
Yes, and Chuck booked me on my first gigs at 14 years old.
Wow,
Yeah.
and that was after you got out of prison ministry, I'm guessing.
After I did, yeah.
She's out on her own now.
Out on
She's
her
been
own
set
now.
free, and we're going to bring her into to Chuck Smith, who was an innovator. He was the guy that started the Jesus movement.
Yes, he
literally.
did.
When you heard the term Jesus freak, it came from Calvary Chapel because he was baptizing hippies in the ocean. They just did a movie about it.
I watched it. It was wonderful.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And so Alyssa Childers' father was part of Love Song.
Yes,
I
I did. Chuck Girard.
Chuck Girard.
Yes.
Great songwriter. I really love those songs.
Yeah. Wonderful song. We were listening to him this week.
Yeah?
Yeah, really great songs.
He did. And they were simple.
Yeah.
They were trying to feel their way through what contemporary Christian music was going to look like.
Right.
Because I remember growing up with hymns, which are beautiful, but they never connected as a young guy because you're used to listening to contemporary music, and so suddenly you're going, I don't even know what this is. And it's like listening to Mozart. It's like, not my thing.
Right.
And then I first hear contemporary Christian music, and it moved me because it's like, I love this. I feel like somehow this makes sense to me. First time you raise your hands is hard. You're embarrassed. You're like kind of like half up. Anybody notice that? But I went to John Wimber's church, which is the Vineyard. He started Vineyards. And that's when I really started getting a hold of what contemporary Christian music was going to be and where it was going to go. Little did I know, how sophisticated it would get, or not.
Right.
I guess depending on how people view it. Nowadays I almost feel like people are re-examining it and wondering if perhaps it lost some of the depth of what Christian music used to leave culture. I mean, the hymns are unbelievable. What they pack in one line.
Right.
I don't know how they do that.
Right.
What is different about that kind of music writing from what you would have grown up with?
I think Christian music now, I mean, everything's changed, right? You have worship leader music on the radio, where back then you had groups like Love Song or Sweet Comfort Band or whatever doing, I guess what you'd say, Christian artist type music. And what's unfortunate now is to be able to make it in the industry, you have to do worship music. But not everyone is called to lead worship music.
Yeah.
And so I think it gets a little imbalanced at times. But I appreciate, like, there's nothing sweeter than what I grew up with. I was only allowed to listen to Christian music. And so I'm very well versed on all of the singers of the 80s and 90s. But it formed who I was. That music was something different, and that sweetness doesn't exist as much to me anymore in that space, because I think you have to have the different genres within the genre. But and hymns still, like, I love.
Like I said, I mean, I remember kind of when I first heard the contemporary stuff, I felt like, oh, I want to move into this because this sounds more like what I'm used to hearing, and I did connect. It did allow me to worship in a way I had never done before. I didn't used to raise my hands. I mean, I wasn't charismatic, so that wouldn't have been part of my style anyways. But once I experienced that, I realized, why wouldn't God Almighty kind of give you access to worship Him any way you feel like? I mean, maybe, who cares? I guess.
Right.
But as I get older, so I don't know if this is an older guy thing or what, I got to be honest, I look at some Christian music, and in our churches right now, it's just really shallow in some the lyrics. It just seems very so simplistic, and the depth of the hymns, revisiting them is what I'm getting at. And I watch what they're packing into a couple lines. I go, this is the gospel,
Right.
in 4 or 5 lines, which is very difficult. I mean, a great songwriter is, to me, a melody is beautiful,
but I think it's a lot easier than lyrics, because lyrics have to tell the story.
Right. Absolutely.
And to be able to pack that much into a few lines is harder to do. But you wrote your own songs, or for the most part, and you started as a young child, right?
Yes.
And who was your influences then growing up?
At the time, there was an artist, or is an artist, she's my friend, Krista Lewis, and she was one of the very few people in the Christian industry that were doing something different. Like, it wasn't the Maranatha sound or whatever it was in California. Like, she had soul.
Okay.
She was writing stuff that was Christian, but it had like a sound that was jazz and just all these different things. So she's who I listened to all the time. And then I got into gospel artists like the Winans family and CeCe Winans. So those were my biggest influences. And my mom would play music all the time, and we'd listen to them.
And you started writing your own stuff. You play...
Yeah, I would be considered mostly top liner melody person. So I go into a studio and someone just basically has to play any kind of chord progression, and then I start
just riffing like it's
riffing,
really?
The melodies and the lyric over it. And I started really writing songs when I was about 12 years old in my brother's room, and he got some type of recording equipment, and that music got into the hands of some small independent labels in California, and then we started.
So you weren't even really pursuing it, it just kind of happened organically.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. Everything was that. I wasn't like, I'm setting out to be such and such. It really was, like, in my family, it really was ministry only. You know, it wasn't to try to monetize or to be famous or anything like that. So the intentions were very, very pure.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of free things all over. Like, that was every Monday, every summer of my childhood, we were at a park or street corner in Corona, which wasn't always the safest. And we would do ministry stuff and hand out food. And that was a part of our growing up years. So somebody heard me, and I had my first independent deal, I think around 13 to 15. And then by the time I was 15, John Elefante and his brother, Dino Elefante, had received my CD through someone. And they flew out to Corona, and I did a concert in Main Street in Corona for them, and ended up having another record deal.
You said something about, I don't remember the exact words you use now, because I'm getting old, and so I forget everything, as I do. But it was something to the effect, I think what you were saying was, you weren't trying to monetize what you were doing, or you weren't trying to make a career out of it. It was pure.
It was.
Okay.
Right.
I feel like my comedy went from just trying to compete at the highest levels of comedy and comedy clubs, because that's hard enough. It's a hard performance art.
Right, yes, absolutely.
And when you're in the comedy clubs, especially when everybody's cursing and doing this and this, and this one I started was in the 90s, so it's not even nearly as radical as it is now, where if you're not saying F and this and blah, 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 you're not even a comic. That's how bad it's become. But my whole thing was, I'm an artist, and I really was inspired by Bob Reiner's Roaring Lambs book. That was the first time I really understood the idea of Christians affecting culture, that we have an obligation to redeem the culture, or at least bring that truth and that sanctification to it, and then see what the people deal with it. But at least you've done your purpose to bring the gospel. And so I went into these comedy clubs and said, can I compete? No cursing, no sex jokes, but be in the highest level. And I did. I was at the Improvs, and I was at the Funny Bone, in the highest level, did the TV shows and whatever as a Christian. It didn't compromise. I always say there's a difference between compromise and strategize. You know, I never compromise what I believe, but sometimes you have to be strategic in how you communicate.
Yeah.
Because the biggest point, the greatest story of all times is Christ. If nobody hears you speak, it's irrelevant. You still have to find a way to make sure the story can be heard. And sometimes that's in your tone, your countenance, your character, your intentions. I think one of the greatest destructions to Christian America, and I always reference it as Christian America because this is my territory. I'm not talking about people overseas who've paid such a price and they're willing to accept that, is the commercialization of our faith.
Right.
to this idea that it becomes a business.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if there has been more perfect example of that than music. Because when people think of it, the performance arts as Christians, it's usually always music.
Right.
It's the number one.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there's a few comics, there's a few magicians, maybe, or maybe a juggler. You know.
Yeah, right.
There's all the outskirts of it, but it's music.
It's music, yeah.
They consider that to be appropriate art. You get into it, and you find the dark underbelly.
Right.
What is really the saddest realization you came across when this became something that you thought was pure and beautiful and just uplifting, and next thing you know, oh, I see, you're like them.
And worse in ways.
Well, explain that.
I think, my mom and dad were unaware. They just thought she's going out to do ministry on a bigger platform.
Which is what you thought too.
What I thought too. And so they sent me, I had younger siblings. They couldn't just leave their life and go on the road with me. Like, the kids needed a mom to take care of them. They needed my dad to work. So I'm now touring the country, trusting the Christian label and the booking agencies and whatever to take care of my life. Now, when I met you, I didn't have any supervisor with me.
Right.
It's just me by myself, right? I traveled alone and was at the whims of whatever the record label was thinking for me.
Yeah.
And I soon realized that they don't really, I'm not saying individuals didn't care about me. As a whole, I wasn't cared for. As a young child, it's a shame. I didn't get my homework done. No one was making sure all those years that my education was being taken care of. I remember touring on those Freedom Blast tours, and they saw me. I was transitioning, from 15 to like 16, 17. I had gained some weight. They put a trainer on the road with me to make sure that I wouldn't be partaking in anything that would make me look.
For a 16-year-old girl.
It really wreaked a lot of havoc in my life. They wanted to make sure that I was still marketable looking, and I was looking to them like I was on the edge of not being marketable enough.
For your weight?
For my weight, yes. And so this guy gets on the road. He's telling me, what are you eating? No, eat this, eat that. And I'm now sneaking out of my hotel to go get McDonald's, and I'm like, I'm almost rebelling against this even more because I was just feeling the weight of them watching me and what's happening. And like, this is Christian music. You'd think that doesn't matter.
Right.
It's the message. It's what's happening. And so I had never thought about those things until I'm on the road as a Christian singer about my image and what that looks like. And so it really did, I think, the lack of care, being around the people on the road, that if there was no exceptions that I was a young girl. Like, I was exposed as I would be. I've been on several tours with huge artists that aren't Christian artists in my life, and it was the same thing. It was essentially the same thing, sometimes worse as far as what was permissible and what wasn't. And, there wasn't any guard for me as a young girl. So I think the answer to the question is, like, I was exposed to the realization that there was no difference. There was no trust. You are just as much important to these people based on monetizing, based on your sales and what you're doing for them. And it's definitely wasn't about my heart and soul, which I found out, especially later on.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because even in the secular, like SAG, for example, if you're on a sitcom, you have to do your work. I mean, they have tutors on. I mean, they realize that a kid has to be able to continue their growth as a human and move into society.
And they're militant about it. When we did America's Got Talent, my daughter was underage, and we were happy about it because they're like, it's 8 o'clock, you guys are free to leave and everyone can stay till 2 a.m. They're very much careful. I mean, there's laws now that have been passed. When I was young, I had my record deal, and that money that I got, my parents took it, and I didn't see any of it. But there was, laws since passed with Coogan accounts and trusts and things like that give a percentage to that child that protects them. But I'm sure many people went through what I did to where that came into place. But there's definitely more protection in the Screen Actors Guild than there was in the Christian music world.
I don't want to just sort of crap all over Christendom because that's an easy target nowadays.
Oh, for sure,
especially
yeah.
Deconstructionism and basically heresy. Basically, people of our ilk and our generation. Maybe I'm older than you, and I probably maybe got into business before you, but it's easy to start off with sort of the best intentions and hopes and dreams, and somehow think this is different. These guys are going to be different. Even when I moved to Nashville, I was in clubs, comedy clubs, and suddenly I'm going into churches, and God has sort of transitioned me into this new way of communicating. I'm going to use your gift I gave you, but there's a plan for you that you didn't know was coming, and is the way I'm going to have you use the comedy gift I've given you. So I assumed when I moved here that we were all friends.
Right.
All the Christian artists get together and we hang out and we lift each other up and can be safe for each other.
Right.
Because what the average believer out there in the consumer world, if we're going to be crass, don't understand is we're on the same stinking journey you're on, and we are no better at this than you are. But we've been put in a position where we're given accolades and expectations we can't meet,
right?
Because we're just people, broken people trying to show broken people where there's some healing,
right?
And so it was disappointing for me because I kind of felt like I need artists because they understand my mind, because we're different, the way we think and the way we engage and how sensitive we are. But we're very creative, and oftentimes your average person can't connect to us there either, because that's a world they don't understand.
Right.
They're not in the right brain like we are a lot, where we can really get abstract. But I don't want to take pot shots at our people because they are in the same boat. But I do feel like there clearly is some sort of secular control and buying and control of our industry and our people and our message as though it's a commodity.
Right.
Have you found that to be kind of the case as to it's almost being, it's a gimmick?
Yeah. And I think, there's definitely, I try to find a balance in sharing the truths of my story and being respectful, but it's also like honoring the truth of what happened throughout my life in this industry, and I try to be pretty transparent about it. I have a lot of just things that I'm passionate about when it comes to, it's God. We're out here because of our faith. It's the purest thing in the world is the gospel, what it's done for us. And so I have a serious hard time with mixing them, and have had in my life and in the past. And I love doing, I'm a songwriter on, during the weeks, and on the weekends I will go out and do worship with my husband, but I was like, I really want to have my work be outside of the church more, so that way I can choose to serve in the church as a free will of my heart, and not start feeling the tension of I need to go work and have a gig, be hired at the church. Like, that's something I really wanted. I wanted to balance what that is, because it's a hard balance, and I've seen people have a really hard time balancing what that is in their own lives.
Yes. Well, and what gets tricky is what started out as kind of our desire to honor God with our gift becomes our livelihood.
Yes,
so suddenly money's attached to this. It's like, what do I do?
Right.
I got to get paid, but now I feel like, am I doing this because I need to get paid, or because I feel like I want to tell this message and the money will flow with it? And it's just, the angst that we fight through that they don't know. And I've talked to my people because they watch every Monday, and it's a big growing podcast for some reason. But oftentimes they're believers who are trying to negotiate their life and navigate their life from all over the world, but yet we all kind of have these commonalities of trying to understand who we are, and the struggle in a postmodern, nihilistic, relativistic, anti-truth, hatred towards our faith, who started the Western culture. And we're moving into a season that is something we're not used to,
right,
as believers in the West.
In the West,
not in the Middle East, not in China and North Korea. And it's probably good. Winnows you out. It forces you to decide what really matters. But it's painful. Who the heck wants to be a martyr? Who wants to be persecuted? But nevertheless, there's always been sort of this internal persecution within our people in regards to the fact that we are sinners that make mistakes, and where we most need grace and assistance along our decision making that has made some that were wrong, some bad decisions. We find we are castigated. We're put into some sort of deeper responsibility for our sin as opposed to the average person, probably because we're revealed.
Right.
And the people somehow conflate, if I can just sort of make them worse, then I don't have to deal with me. But you had that experience, certainly, to such a degree, and maybe one of the most egregious of sins that a young lady can commit, and you got pregnant out of wedlock. So tell me about that story, as in, obviously it's your business, how you got there, but just sort of how that transpired and how it affected the way people treated you, from good old pure, God bless her, sing Nikki, we're with you, my daughter can learn from you, to cast her aside, right?
Right.
Explain that story if you could.
Right. Well, and I think there's a lot that's been lost and that wasn't understood by the people who just kind of pushed me out of the industry. I was, as I said earlier, I was out on my own. I was touring the country. One year I did 200 shows that year without parents.
You literally had no parents, so you was just the road managers, or
sometimes it's just me.
Wow.
I mean, I would.
How old were you?
15, 16,
Holy
17.
smokes.
Yeah, by myself.
Too young.
Taking merchandise money and going to the mall that day. I mean, it was a wild childhood.
Taking merch.
I did. I'd have people call me like, you left some of your CD checks. Well, actually, you're thinking about going through a divorce. Well, let me give you some advice.
That's what I've learned at 15.
15, yeah. I didn't know what I was doing, but I felt like I had to. I felt like I couldn't, especially given the fact that I'm on these platforms speaking about something so important. I felt like I had to not be a kid and act a certain way, and certainly if I was struggling with something, not be vulnerable enough to get accountability or help or anything like that. That was non-existent.
Yes, but that's what I mean. We have nowhere to go because we get exposed instead of finding a place. Let me help walk you through that. Oh, you failed. Oh, so I don't get any grace.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I see how this works.
Well,
but I got to sing grace to you, but I don't get it when it's my turn.
Right. And I think in some ways things have evolved differently from then. Back then I feel like had I shared with someone, personally anything, I think I could have gotten, canceled more. So maybe I think within ministry realms, people are being more open about, hey, let's keep each other accountable. Let's help people who are thinking about, suicidal ideations or whatever in the church, and pastors. I think there's more discussions about certain things than there was then. Yes, and there needs to be. I mean, we're all people. But yeah, I think I believed in the purity of what I was talking about. So I was on the road. I was an abstinence speaker.
You had the ring?
I had the necklace that I chewed on, had little teeth marks in it, a little key to my heart.
This is really hard.
Right. That's when I would chew on it when times got rough. I had the necklace. I did a ceremony, the purity ceremony. And, I did so many interviews that were published and things about that. And I said I wouldn't give a single kiss away till my engagement. And at the time, I really had those visions for myself. I thought, I'm going to absolutely walk this through. This is not going to be an issue. And when I reached 17, I had never held hands with a guy, nothing like that. And I meet someone who's older than me. I'm allowed to have him on the road with me. I had people allowing him to be in spaces with me in bedrooms by ourselves. He's 22, very much more experienced, and later to find out a very crazy life, you know. And he would be deemed later on a sexual deviant and arrested for multiple things. Like, he was a predator of sorts in my life. And so I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have the help, the grounding to be able to decipher something for myself. I just was fearful. Like, I can't say no. And I was alone. I was so lonely.
Yeah.
I'd been traveling alone. I didn't have a relationship with my parents that was healthy. And so I'd always wanted that father-daughter relationship. You got this guy who's coming in for the kill. He's in my life. I don't know. I didn't know how, like, in my brain, I knew this. And God in every situation has always given me, like, hey, this isn't right for you. Like, I had that realization, he's not right for you. But I was so lonely that I couldn't make that decision that was best for me. I was afraid to lose, finally, someone that was noticing me, paying attention to me. So it wasn't long after that I found out that I was pregnant. And a situation that I really can't believe happened to me, and I didn't want to happen. And it did. And I didn't know how to have a voice in that. And so I was on the road at the time. I was out with a whole bunch of artists on the Winter Jam tour. They were very kind. And they said, we're not going to kick you off this tour. We'd like you to stay. But honestly, for me personally, I had so many girls every night coming up to me and autographing their stuff. And I personally said, I'm not going to do it. I can't stand up there, and I can't sign and talk to these girls after and feel the way I'm feeling and be pregnant. And so I left the road. And, you know, it was one of those things. I found out I'm pregnant. What should I do? I can hide this. I could have a honeymoon baby. I can have an abortion. There's so many options to not have to deal with the option of, I know if this goes through, I'm going to lose everything. I know that there was no other option at that time, but you're going to lose it all, you know? And so it was immediate. I mean, it immediately happened where everything changed for me. I had 4 top 5 singles, #1 songs on radio, records in all of the retailers, Christian retailers, and, you know, people were sending them back, taking them off their shelves and all that. So it's hard to be a teenager, for one. And then it's hard to be a face that is recognized in the church world, and then dealing with teen pregnancy by myself in Nashville, no family. And it was just, there were so many things that made it a really, really difficult situation. And I think the hardest thing was all these people I thought kind of cared for me. And as soon as I was pregnant, there was no resources or help or how are you? What can we do? I lost my job. I couldn't take care of my new family. And I wasn't ever even sent a pack of diapers from my record label. You know, it was one of those things where, I am a product and I'm of no value anymore.
Yeah, right.
I'm useless. I really thought my value was gone at that point.
What is it about how we perceive women in seemingly given extraordinarily more expectations or responsibility? Sorry, I just spit on you.
You're fine.
For an act of 2. I mean, this is an old story, so obviously the fact that men are cads and will take advantage of young women. And, you know, I got to tell you something. I don't. It's how do you navigate this? As believers, we're supposed to be pure. Yeah, we say that the sexual act is a sacred, holy commitment of people who've given their lives to each other. It's the oldest story, the original story, Adam and Eve. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's just certain parameters he'd ask. That's all. Simple. But women are held to a different standard. Now, I think it's a double-edged sword. Here's my take. You tell me. You're better at this. You're a woman. I think women are. There's a countenance and a sweetness to you as a feminine part of God that is beautiful and different, and as a man and as a father and a husband, that we want to defend. We want to protect your honor, your chastity, because there's something beautiful about it to us. It's our warrior spirit to defend you. So in some respects, maybe the honor that comes with that expectation is kind of noble, but unrealistic.
Right.
So what is it about maybe women and what is expected that you think maybe is unfair or is just unrealistic? And within our Christian world, how are women sort of left adrift because we're just simply don't want to deal with the fact that women have the same desires as men and get in the same situations we do. They're just the ones that can't hide from the aftermath if it ends up being a pregnancy. So tell me about kind of that, because there's going to be people watching right now, girls, women, who are going to say, I got nowhere to go. I thought this was sanctuary Christianity.
Yeah.
Long question, but I just wonder if there's a magic experience that you can give to these folks that can help them understand the beauty of femininity as long with the responsibility, whatever that means. You tell me.
Right. You started the question a little bit with the expectations of a woman as compared to a guy, things like that. And I mean, my son and I were actually just having this conversation today about what we find our story to be a beautiful story, right? We really do. This is my family, and it's on paper looks very complicated, but the way we're woven together and all the things, it's very different. We were talking about that because I think Kate Hudson, they had all these things out about her in the last couple weeks because all her kids have different fathers, right? All my kids have different fathers. I had a child at, like I said, at 18 years old with someone who ended up being imprisoned and all these different things for various things. He was an unsafe person. And I had this desire to have a family and a really pure desire for a pure family. And that didn't work out against everything I tried, against pastoral help in town here, against putting him through sexual therapies and things. He continued to do illegal activities and put me in a position where I was unsafe. And then I asked the church here in town at Belmont to give me a letter of release. I wanted that. It was important to me that on a biblical level that I felt released from this marriage. And they gave me that, and they said there's this word porneia, and there's like a adultery and abandonment in the Bible, and I had all of the things that gave me a biblical out of that. And then I'm traumatized at this point. I get into another marriage that wasn't a great situation, and by the time I'm 23, 24 years old, I have 2 children, and I'm on my own, and I'm a single mom, and what just happened as I was trying to deal with really childhood abandonment and trauma from my parents. My heart I wasn't out in the world, hooking up with people and doing all this stuff. I wasn't out trying to make a mess of my life or anything like that. I was really stuck in situations beyond my control. But, reading these comments under Kate Hudson stuff, I was like, and her situation's definitely different than mine, but it was like, wow, women can be judged for things without that chance of the story, right? And I think there's like these blanket judgments you have of someone who's been divorced a couple times or has a child out of wedlock or whatever it is. There has been these these standards and these judgments that have happened that have made it really hard for people who don't know me. They don't know the pain and the struggle, and when I cried out to God, and when I wanted help, and when I wished that things would have been the way that is acceptable in our church communities, or just even outside. I mean, Kate Hudson is not in the church community, but outside of it, it's still the same thing. So I can't just say church people are judgmental, because all people are judgment. Not all people, but all realms are subject to judgment, you know? And so it's hard to read that kind of stuff. It's hard as a woman to go, I know men who just got married in their early 40s and they spent 23 years with a lot of different people, and their lives look really different, and they're never judged a day.
Right.
And me, who believed in the sanctity of marriage and wanted something to work for my family that failed, but I was trying.
Yeah.
You know, then there was this great amount of judgment, and I'm talking like in various ways over all those years after. You know, I had to deal with being canceled at churches, and I got used to it. I got thick skin with it and tried to separate that stuff.
Do you think that that's changed maybe as time has gone on, as far as given maybe a little bit more forgiveness or grace? And I do know that I want to say this only to continue the conversation without sounding as though I'm accusatory, but there was a comedian who was a Christian who was basically having a lot of flings on the road and with married women and all types of things. Maybe you know who I'm talking about. I'm not here to name names, but people might know. Anyways, guy, and suddenly he got caught. It was going to come out in a Christian magazine. So suddenly he lost his career, for a second.
Right. Right.
Everything got shut down. The tour goes down. I think he had a Netflix special that's pulled.
Wow.
But what we discover is what used to be maybe the sense that you repent, the sense that you say, boy, okay, how do I rebuild and rebuild trust? I know God can forgive me immediately.
Right.
It's going to be a little bit more challenging for the rest of you guys, but man, I sure love that, because I know you're going to need that someday. But what I've discovered, and it also happens with the secular, is, you know what, just go to rehab. And now you're better. See, as long as I do rehab,
and
see?
Right.
So that's all that mattered, was that I've gone through the formula so that I'm better now, so you can leave me alone so I can go back to my career. And that's kind of what happened to this person. Now, again, I don't begrudge somebody trying to rebuild their career. And probably very much could say, I repent. I failed. I've been exposed. I wouldn't have done it myself, so maybe I needed this.
Right. And sometimes hitting rock bottom will give you a new realization.
But he's back in the game.
Yeah.
I don't know that women will be given such grace or such a, maybe they would. No, I don't know.
It's hard to tell. I think it's, you know.
I mean, can you still go out and perform now? Is it kind of like, of course you're married, so they almost feel like the dust is settled?
Yeah, I'm not so much of a risk. I've been with my husband for almost 10 years, you know, so it's definitely different. I don't know. You know, I feel like back then I had no real options to come back. And I don't want to make blanket statements. So within that, there was a handful of churches that were so loving. It wasn't all people.
Yeah.
There was some radio stations who said, we're not going to give up on you. There were some, but there was the opposite, you know, on an 85-15, when 85% of the industry is saying, no, you can't build anything off of that. So that's why I got into the mainstream music to
Which, by the way, you were quite successful, wouldn't you say? I mean, it was the mainstream treated you quite well.
They did.
You ended up being a backup singer with Carrie Underwood. Mike Fisher was one of my guests, as a matter of fact. So I'm sure
great.
you know Mike.
Yeah.
Her husband. I think it's interesting that you were on, was it America's Got Talent?
Yes.
Okay. So I remember that story because I think in a way your story came up in speaking of that. How did that feel to you? because I love the honesty and the vulnerability. It's crucial.
Yeah.
That Christians just say, look, this is what it is, and that's up to you. I know who I am, and I know what my God has done for me. So that's your problem if you can't move on. But by the same token, man, I want to be careful about our dirty laundry going in front of the people who hate us anyways. So did you ever feel like in some respects, I'm just being honest, but I hope they don't use this as a malice towards our faith in general?
They did, and I think it was, you know, they heard my story, they made it about Nikki was in Christian music turned their back on her. Let's give her a second chance, you know, and show them that she's...
You manufactured it. It came out organically in the conversation.
Oh, yes.
You weren't really knowing this was coming.
No, and here's the thing that made it hard. What makes it hard is that I did hours and hours of interviews, and they condensed that into a 60-second, you know, little clip that they play before you go and perform. Mm-hmm. And so people got to hear, you know, this piece where I'm standing on the stage and like, yeah, and they took my records off the shelves. Boom.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they don't hear.
Kind of harsh.
It sounded harsh, and I received a lot of Instagram action on that, and people were really mad. Like, why'd you make Christians look bad, and why this and why that? And that was just me. Really, I didn't embellish anything. I shared my truth, but I also, I shared the truth. I didn't get an opportunity to be heard for the restorative part of my story, right? And like even now, when I tell you, yeah, it was hard. There was a lot of people. There was a real good handful of people that were loving to me. You know, that doesn't get heard in those spaces if it doesn't fit the narrative that we're trying to move down. But they were very gracious and kind at America's Got Talent. The last episode, the week before we were no longer on there, we said, hey, if we aren't able to share some of our faith here, it doesn't match what we're doing in our lives. Like, that's important. And so that last episode we were on, we're in a church. They go we went all the way. I'm sharing my testimony. My husband's crying. I'm crying. My husband shares how God delivered him from addiction. And he came together and adopted my daughter, and the beauty of the story, which was like, if we leave this TV show and we don't have an opportunity to close this, we'll be really upset. You know, and so when we made it about our faith on the last episode, we were off the next week. After that, I don't know, it was probably other reasons besides that. I don't want to say it was because of that, but we are glad we had at least some of that brought to the table. But there was, I wasn't at a place. I just had a baby. I wasn't at a place to handle. There was like some really creepy YouTube videos about me and comments all up and down the AGT sites and stuff about who they thought I was and how I just make, like I was saying, Christianity look bad. And I'm like, that really stinks, because it almost looked like those first two episodes that I wasn't in support of the church or pastors. Now, I am known to be vocal about when I see like egocentric pastors who are out for their own financial gain, and there's people, single mothers suffering in their churches. I will get impassioned about some of this because I want the purity in there, because it's so special, you know. But that was a quite an experience that I wasn't prepared for that, and especially not being given a full platform to share my heart on it.
But here you are in this national platform, huge platform, kind of like you said, telling your story. What people oftentimes don't know if they're not in this business is how things are edited, how things are, they're trying to craft a narrative to make an interesting show. So they're going to find things that stand out, that they think will be, this will get a buzz. But what's interesting is that you, in a way, were just simply telling the story that was true, which you can't hide from. Secondly, you probably ultimately were saying, but look, God has gotten me through this, and like I said, maybe that's edited out, or maybe you weren't just given permission to elaborate.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But here you still sit as a believer, as someone who cares and honors the dignity of our people and our faith and what you have to say. Meanwhile, some of the contemporaries that you came up with have deconstructed. They have walked away from our faith. They're heretics. And one thing I've noticed about the deconstructors, and I want to get your thoughts on this because you probably know some of them too. It's not enough. It's usually they were hurt somehow by the church, and that's fine. Who wasn't?
Right.
But it's not enough to say, I'm reevaluating what this faith thing looks like, and I find that it doesn't line up with the culture that I want to be true now based on what they're now telling us is the moral standards. Obviously completely antithetical to Christianity historically. But it feels like they want to take people with them.
Yeah.
There seems to be this almost glee in not only saying, have we discovered the truth now, but it's time for us all to abandon this as though it's some sort of a relic that needs to be disassembled and forgotten as a mistake, culturally or whatever. So clearly they're doing a lot more damage than you did. You actually told a story that happened to you by these people. It's not your fault that you were treated that way. You made decisions that caused people to make evaluations. What is your thoughts on these artists that have walked away from the faith?
Well, honestly, in ways, there are pieces of that I understand. I went through a season of atheism after this.
Oh. Interesting.
Yes, I didn't believe that, I had this, the childlike faith. I had grown up in a charismatic background that, name it and claim it, God will heal, all these things. So, there was a lot of disappointments, when you realize you'll suffer trials of many kinds, the James stuff, like you will face stuff, but I wasn't equipped for that side of the faith, only the hype and the blessing and this and that. And so I hit a wall, not only because I was in that charismatic faith movement and stuff, but because of the experiences that I had. Once I got to my early 20s, it was like, how could the God of the universe be looking out for me? And I also had a young mind. I couldn't at that point balance the thoughts and the things that I had gone through. And I was relating all of those actions to God. The church hurts, or, essentially just people hurts. Yeah. Someone hurt you, that's a person. And so I just started thinking, God abandoned me. How you knew how much I loved you and how much this ministry meant to me, and now I'm not even deemed worthy to be in it. And then of all people, I had to meet this guy. So I was blaming God for a lot of things that weren't his fault. And I meet this guy who happens to be this crazy human being. How was it that? How did I get so unlucky? Why weren't you looking out for me? What happened? I needed a father. I was hoping that you would. Look out for me in my life. And so I don't know, as far as the atheism thing is concerned, it was just like I just disconnected. I didn't want to hear about it. I didn't want, my parents would try to talk me back in and say things, but I'm looking at them going like, I don't want to be in the same club as you. As a young person in my head, I don't want to be a part of that club. I don't respect how you're operating in your real life outside of ministry life. And I saw behind the scenes. I saw the money issues that were happening in the church, and in certain churches. I saw things with people that would go on platform and minister, and behind the scenes they're being a different person. And I was like, honestly, being in the front row of some corruption really messed me up. And it just leveled my faith at that time. And I think when I have a heart for people who are wandering and figuring certain things out. I know for me that God was faithful enough to find me in that place, and miraculously redeemed my situation to a point where my faith is stronger than ever. you know, and I just trust God to do that in people's lives. It's unfortunate to see, and it's unfortunate, honestly, what's happened in certain areas of all of this.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I would venture to say that the majority of the cause of atheism is pain. If you watch the stories of the atheists, it's usually, God, heal my mom with cancer. No, screw you.
Right.
Please let my parents come back together. No, I'm out. I mean,
Right.
the problem of pain is maybe the single most difficult element of the Christian experience, because it seems so capricious and arbitrary and unjust
Right.
from the God that we said. And you know what, Nikki? I look to him all the time and I go, somehow I saw you as not only salvation spiritually, but of my life's journey. When I'm in trouble, you're supposed to bail me out. When things are hard, you're supposed to take that away. I'm not. Why would I have to go through this?
Right.
This isn't right. I wouldn't do this to my kid.
Right.
And I had that dark night of the soul, shaking my fist at God. If
Yeah.
I would never treat my son the way you've treated me.
Right.
And it sucks, because you are on the cross saying, why have you forsaken me?
Yeah.
And there's nowhere to go. When God's gone, where do I go now?
Right.
What do I got left? So I think it's interesting that, and this is what happens. You have and it's very typical. I think it's the formula God puts us through. Is you go through the dark night of the soul, where He doesn't abandon you. He stays very quiet, and you are stuck with, now it's your turn. You walk away, or you say, all right, dust myself off, let's roll. And then something changes.
Yeah.
Now you're in. Now
Right.
you're one of us. And He says, now I can trust you, because it's not going to be easy.
Right.
So get that out of your head right now.
Right.
If you're looking for easy, if you're thinking God is going to fix it all, that
Right.
He's going to make it all sweet, and that the football goal always comes through, and the cancer always goes away, and the baby always survives. If that's what you're looking for, you picked the wrong religion, because that ain't going to happen.
And that's what I needed to hear, I think, at various places that I attended church-wise and different aspects of my life. I think, I think through my 20s, I had just started dealing with my brother's death of cancer.
Oh, okay, see, I didn't
So
know that,
yeah, so I was going to say, like,
apologize for
no,
that.
it's great. It's truth that pain was a part of the doubt, but it was also rooted in the fact that, death and those types of situations that rock you weren't a part of the teachings that I was hearing. And at least in many of the churches that we attended, it was just kind of like, maybe your faith wasn't strong enough. Maybe you weren't praying like you should have. God, God is the healer. He is. But it was like this, no, if you're walking in perfect faith and you're doing this and marking all these boxes, then you're going to receive the healing that God provides to people in the here and now, So it's like, when my brother died, we had no idea how to deal with that, because he was at, Kenneth Copeland was laying hands on him, and all these, faith healers, he was in their rooms and he was doing the things, and we still lost him to a very rare aggressive form of cancer, and his death was horrible. As I was an older sister watching this still as a child, going, how can a human being go through such a terrible death with so much pain, and then I have to go in my early 20s and in my quiet times pray, and I'm like, well, why would God care about my little circumstance right now? Why would He care that I'm being rejected, and here my brother was in excruciating pain?
Yeah.
Like it really caused an imbalance of thoughts for me. It took me a long time to even pray to God for something that I physically was going through or anything. So I felt very much unseen, like compared to my problems, and things like that.
But they're real.
Very real, yeah.
Your problems are real. Your pain is real,
Yes.
too. I mean, we can't just pretend that there's sort of these gradations of pain. And obviously, a physical pain is very much existential, and you're grappling with it. And we've all had our moments where we've had a physical pain. It's like,
unendurable. I get it. But, and I've said this for years, and I learned about it, no matter what you're going through, guaranteed you, somebody right now would trade you. Right now. I would drive past a hospital. I mean, I really do this. And I'll look up and there's a guy in that window up there, so right now, who's been told, you got 3 months, you're never going to see your daughter get married, you're never going to see your grandkids, you're gone. Right. It's over. And I'm sitting here in traffic going, it's traffic. And I know there's a guy going, that's your problem?
Right.
I'll trade you.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you what, you come up here and you get 3 months left. I would love to sit in traffic. I would love to be able to have the privilege of sitting in traffic for 20 minutes as the biggest problem in my life.
Right.
You know, it does make it easier. Nothing is harder for me to grapple with than when people are in deep pain. Believers, I'm given a scripture verse. I don't want a scripture verse.
Right.
Didn't help. Doesn't help. Don't need it. It's kind of a very superficial way for you to not grapple with the fact that what I really need to do is to just hear me. Just maybe sit with me. I learned this with people who've lost somebody. And I lost my dad. I remember thinking, he died of brain cancer, and so it was pretty fast. And I remember at his funeral thinking, you know, in all my life, when I've been in these moments, like at a funeral or something, my dad's always been with me. This time, he's the one that's not here. And again, it's that moment of, I have nowhere to go, because this is a new experience for me. I don't even know how to navigate it because it's unusual. And I had a friend of mine who had, at that time, he had lost his dad, and I just had learned enough from that to say, there's nothing, I told him this, or emailed him, I don't remember, but nothing I can say is going to help this. I cannot fix this. I cannot take this pain away. Just sit in the grief. Yeah. The only thing I can tell you is I know exactly how you feel. That I can tell you. Yeah. And whatever you need, let me know. Let them tell you.
Right.
Because you...
Yeah.
It's hard. Well, even telling these stories are hard for us, but they're important because people need to know you're not doing something or going through something that hasn't been experienced thousands and thousands and thousands of times over thousands of years. This is the human experience. This is original sin manifest. So at least we understand what's happening. Doesn't make it easier. So let's find some, as we get ready to close, and I don't want to take your time, but, you know, if you don't mind going a few minutes over. Yeah. So let's find some good news.
Yes.
Let's find some happy things. So your story, you've had some really amazing experiences with Carrie Underwood. It must have been fun. Tell me about where you were when Prince decided to jump up on stage and play a solo.
Well, we had received a call. I had a show in Los Angeles called Jazz Night, and I was there for 6 or 7 years. It was the biggest live residency in LA. And so, you know, you'd have 1 week I was singing literally in Stevie Wonder's arms.
Wow.
Yeah, singing Overjoyed, and I'm just in tears. And we didn't even know he was going to come up on the stage. He asked to be, you know, left alone. And
did he play or just sort of come up?
He got up and sang.
Wow.
And he ended up playing a little bit and then kind of making a little mini concert. But he's just said, leave me alone. And I had celebrity guests every week. So I'd, know to give them their privacy and let them enjoy their night out. They came for a show.
And these are people that chose to come because they'd heard about the show, or people you invited? Okay.
No, people that heard about the show.
They're saying, this girl's got the goods, I'm going to go hear her. I mean, that's something to feel good about.
It did, because, that choice to go sing in a hotel lobby was because I needed to get off the road. I was offered a world tour with a really big artist. I said no. I felt like it was time to do things and trust God differently, and to be at home with my kids.
And is this before America's Got Talent? Or
before.
Okay.
So I wanted to create a life that was at home with my kids, doing something different. I can't do these weekend shows. I need to be here establishing something for my family. And even though it felt like at the time, I'm going to sing in a hotel lobby every week, and I was working on Glee at the time, this show, singing songs for them.
Which was a big hit.
Yes, I did like 250 songs on that show.
So you were the voiceover for some
of the actresses, and like when they all sing in groups, that was me and my friends. I just got a phone call one day from my friend Tim Davis, and he was a vocal contractor for SAG jobs in town, and I had just lost my record deal with Warner Brothers, and he called me. He's like, I'm working on Glee, and I think they'd love you to sing on this. And I went, and it changed my life. I did 4 or 5 seasons with the show.
How good must you be? Mm-hmm. Seriously.
Well,
there's nothing wrong with being grateful that you're good at something.
I agree with you. I thought about this yesterday, right? So if someone comes in and you're looking for someone to do tile and grout or whatever in your bathroom, you want them to say, oh, I'll do this perfectly. I'll do an exceptional job. I feel like that as a vocalist. I know that if you hire me to come in and sing, I'm going to do an exceptional job because I'm professional at it. Yeah. You know, and you don't want someone that's going to come and be like, I might be able to get this for you.
Or isn't sure if they're good enough. Yeah. It's like, I hope you think you can
do no, I'm aware of what my limitations are and what I can do. And I can say, oh, no, I can nail that 100%. I'll make you happy. So I feel like that as a singer. But with the jazz night stuff, we had, weekly people come in. That was a sacrifice for me to try something new. I didn't know it was going to be what it was. And it was one of those things I felt like it was God's way of saying, hey, when you're obedient, all these things can come to you. Yeah. You know, I put everything down. I sacrificed the things that I thought were the things to listen to God saying, it's time to be home. It's time to do those things. And as I just stood there in my place, in my in my town that I was living in, all of a sudden, the Jonas Brothers come one week, and then they want to get up and sing with me. And then people like Meghan Trainor and Selena Gomez and all of these different singers. Then like Stevie Wonder came. I'm crying in his arms singing. There's so many singers, I can't name them all. But then the Prince thing was really crazy because I have my bass player who's amazing, and he's like, we just got notified that Prince is on his way to the show. Our show was actually already pretty much over at that point. It's like midnight.
What hotel was it?
At the W Hotel in Hollywood.
Okay.
The show's just about over, and I'm like, oh no, we have to do a whole nother show. We have to. Prince is coming. Of course. And so I'm like, let's redo some of our good songs that we did earlier in the night. Let's put together like a killer set list and stuff. So he comes in. There's like this second floor bridge thing that walks across the top. It's like the second story bridge, and you could see, because it's glass, and you could see Prince walking through, and they
entourage.
His little entourage. They had set up like a couple of chairs for him on his own up there, so he'd be by himself. They even put a small monitor speaker so he can listen to the show and be away from the group. So he walks past it, and he stops and looks at it, and I see him just like wave his hand like, no, this is not good for me. I want to be downstairs. I'm not going to sit up here and watch this show upstairs. And so he gets downstairs and doesn't even sit. He stands at the bar with his entourage and just watches us for the first 2 or 3 songs. And then my husband gets up, and we do like help from my friends. And before you knew it, that solo comes, and he just marches up through the stage and grabs the guy's guitar. And the whole room stops. I mean, all of a sudden you have, and it was a pretty big show, so in a lobby, we'd get anywhere from 600 to 1,300 people in that lobby on a Sunday. You have just phones across the room. Everyone is just like, it was like one of the biggest, I guess, celebrities for them in the music world here, lovers of music that you can see on a random Sunday night come in. And so everything stopped. My husband was singing. He got up. He does this guitar solo, which, by the way, the guitarist Joel Whitley at the time has had several really substantial offers to buy that guitar. Really? So it's such a big deal. He hasn't touched it since.
Wow.
And then the next day, what we didn't realize was the amount of publicity it generated. I think they talked in 7 figures for the hotel. That's how much. They had every podcast, the Rolling Stone, we had TMZ, whatever.
From people's phone videos?
Yeah, they got the clips, and they started airing that all over the different programs and podcasts, and it was wild, the amount of publicity it received for, you know, of course, for Prince coming. We had that a little bit. We had Dennis Rodman came in once and was like saying terrible things about North Korea on stage, and it gave us a lot of press. And I ended up singing with him. And at the time, I probably shouldn't have allowed him on stage, but I was like, it'll be good for the show. He has to sing. And someone's like, don't let him up there. And I was like, ladies and gentlemen, Dennis Rodman, we need the publicity. Yeah. So it's like ended up being this insane experience. Like Justin Bieber came and some other controversial people came that looking back were like, whoa, this is really a weird time in life. But it became a really neat thing. And I was talking to someone this week, and I felt like some of those nights, even though I'm in the middle of Hollywood, I'm singing songs that aren't Christian. There were so many spirit-led type things in that. Like, it was really, really special, and we were able to start a Bible study out of it and do some cool stuff.
So you're pregnant, you're kicked out of the Christian thing, which is such a subculture anyway. You know, who cares? Our biggest stars, nobody's heard of, except for us.
Right.
So we're not that big of a deal.
Yes.
And look what God did. He redeemed your life, your career, and gave you, theoretically, if you're looking at numbers and fame, a much bigger platform and a career and opportunity to, as artists who enjoy and respect other artists. So there's nothing like having somebody that you emulate or like or appreciate dig you. I remember reading about this writer. I always forget his name, and I got to get it. But he talked about, he was a science fiction writer. Dorothy Parker, who was the famous writer, I had written him a note and said, I read your last book, it was great, or whatever, something to that effect. Anyways, he said, everybody goes, you're not a writer until a writer tells you you're a writer. And I never forgot that. It's like, yes, I've had lots of people laugh at me over my life because I'm a comic. But when a comic who I respect says you're funny,
right. Oh, yeah.
I'm funny.
Yes.
I've been given the mantle. So I feel like they came to see you. Yeah. They said, you're a singer. Did that feel good?
It did feel good. It was validating.
Yes.
You know, and even though I wasn't doing it to the capacity I thought I would, or have be the big time artist, it was like I experienced all the things that I would have, and I didn't have to lose anything.
No.
And I felt like there was a protection in that for myself. Like, I did get to have all the fun, and I did all that, but also, like, I didn't have to lose my soul out on the road.
So what's the next season for you then? Is there some new sort of exploration as to what your talent's going to be, or what God might be hoping up for you?
Yeah.
What would that look like? What is that?
Well, a large part of my life and business these last number of years is, you know, I write for kids shows, and I've written for animation, and this last year I had like a Samsung and a Toyota commercial that I wrote. And
nice.
And so I work a lot in the film world, writing music and shows, sitcom streaming platform. Yeah, that's like 90% of my life is I'm a songwriter for film, TV, and kids stuff.
For like episodic, they need a song or something, or even jingles for...
Yeah, like I'll get a script. Like I wrote a song on the Ice Age kids movies, you know, and so they'll be like, Jessie J sang it, and I wrote it, and I sang what she should do, and then they take it, and they do it, and
you're very fulfilled.
I am more fulfilled, actually, being behind the scenes. I'm kind of an introvert homebody by nature. I enjoy that. And so being able to, I have a studio at home, getting, you know, people calling me, especially during the pandemic, I realized what I can engineer my own stuff. So there was like a couple Netflix movies that I sang all the vocals from home, and it went straight to, you know, film. Even a Disney movie recently that I sang just in my closet at home, and they used it in their the thing. So it's like, I love that. I don't need to be seen.
Yeah.
This next year, I'm working on a little more of my story, releasing a book and writing songs, and I've been enjoying doing the ministry stuff with my husband lately. We've been traveling a bit. So.
And the ministry is?
He's a fantastic, amazing, he's a worship leader. And so this last month, we've done about 10 different nights together worship things all over the country.
So churches could bring you in.
Yeah, churches bring us in.
Conventions or any kind of Christian event that might want some praise and worship or just musical entertainment or anything.
Yeah, praise and worship. We did Christmas songs. I'll tell you what, there was a few nights ago I was asked to speak to a group of high schoolers here in town. And I've been more like on cloud 9 this week from that than any other thing I think I've done in the last year, is talking to these kids about what it feels like to be lonely or like feeling that void with other things, especially maybe if there's the parental components not there. And afterwards talking to these high schoolers and them having tears and being able to encourage them, like I think I will be heading more in that direction too.
You know, nothing is more revealed to a parent. I'm a parent of 2. My one is 26, but and my daughter's 22. Just had a baby yesterday.
Oh,
4th.
Congrats.
But you realize that you don't know what you're doing. You're a human being. You have the greatest hopes and dreams for your kids, but they're going to make their own decisions in their life. They're going to make their own calls. You try to direct them best you can. But you also look back and go, boy, I made a lot of mistakes, a lot of failures. And I only say that to say, I don't know why, but I felt like I should say this. We can talk about our parents and how they hurt us.
Right.
And how they failed us at times. And I guess there's evil parents out there too. They're evil people.
Right.
That it's a horrific story that most of us didn't have. We just maybe had neglectful parents or clueless parents or, selfish. Who knows? But they also had parents who maybe didn't do it right for them.
Yes.
And so it's a chain that all you can do is to try to break the chain where the brokenness is. So I guess what I wanted to say was your parents went to prisons. They tried to give people life. They tried to bring the gospel the best they could, and I'm sure they loved you.
Yeah.
And they made some mistakes, and I'm sure they wish they could fix it. Yeah. But I don't think they're bad people. I think they just did the best they could with what they had. So I don't mean to be out of place for that, but I just felt like I don't want parents to think because your kids have made mistakes or even go off the path that you'd hope for them. I can't take credit for every good part of my son's character or my daughter's, which means I'm not going to blame myself for every crappy thing they've done too. They get their own life to live too, and I want to make sure that people understand that. So as we walk away from this, I think probably air this Monday. I think it's important. Christmas time, I want people to feel good about what this Advent season represents and what Christmas represents, especially as we go into the next year. I got a lot of hardcore interviews to put out there, so let's just ease them into it. But as we leave, first off, thank you for being a sister who's this is real and it's true, and you've given your life to it, and you've been an open book so we could learn from you. Your crucifixion and your death and resurrection has healed many. That's what we all go through. We all have to pick up our cross and literally get crucified. And our pain is God's trust. I'm going to trust you with this pain, because when you get over this side of it, you're going to heal people with it. That's what Jesus did. So as we leave, tell the people, how do you know God's real?
Well, for me personally, it's the unfailing, unconditional presence that's been there even when I didn't know. And you look back and you go, he was there. He was always there. When I didn't believe, it didn't change his heart for me. When I rejected God's plans for my life and his purpose, he still pursued my heart. And it's evident. There are ways and channels and people and things looking back that you go, no, there's no denying the presence of God was real. His hand, I shouldn't be alive today. In many ways, more than one, I should not be alive today. And my story should not have turned out the way it did. I had a lot of things working against me, but I feel like part of my purpose now is letting people know that he writes a better story than we could ever write for ourselves. He redeems something in ways, if we allow him to take over and we follow after him, he can take something that really seems like we could never get out of, or that's too messy to fix, and create something beautiful. And I feel like he continually shows me that. And honestly, it's worship and it's music. It's so many different, there's so many layers to what makes God real for me, but it's being in God's presence. There you feel, as an artist even, you feel things, you know, and I just know beyond the shadow of a doubt that his presence is with me because I feel him with me.
And last question is, when God is silent, where is he?
I feel like I felt that way for so long, that God was silent, and I feel like he was nearer than ever in those times. He was closer than ever, walking with me, standing with me, in my shoes with me, being close to me in all of those situations, even though it's hard to see when you're suffering stuff and you're wondering if how something inhumane is happening, or how something, just someone's walking through something you can't fathom. How are they still standing? How are they? And it's the peace that passes all understanding. It's those moments where you go, I would never make. I'm seeing someone we know just lost a child, and you're like, I could never make it through that. And we think that about a lot of things, but we're not in their shoes to be given the grace and the presence of God the way they are, to be able to keep going. It's something we can't fathom in certain situations, but is passing your understanding of how good he is, things that we couldn't imagine people can walk through. But he does give grace and his presence in those situations.
And beauty for ashes.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, this is my sister in Christ, Nikki Leonti, and her life is proof that nothing is beyond God. No tragedy, no pain, no difficulty is wasted, but it's a privilege and an honor to give to us, because we're just passing through. We know who wins. God wins every time. And but we have an obligation to partner with him. We aren't just kids for him to do the work for us. We have our own responsibilities, and maybe, just maybe, sometimes we blame God for things. It's kind of our problem. So God bless you.
God bless you.
I'm gonna
Thank
give
you.
a hug.
Yes.
Thank
you so much.
All right, folks, keep your eyes open and listen for her voice, because it's all over the place. This is God's Comic, Brad Stine, and as you know, all I'm doing is putting the woke back to sleep. See ya.